Did you know that the most advanced actor on the set of Project Hail Mary wasn't even human? While Ryan Gosling was busy training for zero gravity, a team of Oscar-winning engineers was literally inventing a new species of sophisticated animatronics to bring the alien character Rocky to life. This wasn't just a puppet, it was a high-tech marvel capable of matching human performance inputs in real time, ensuring that when you see that spider-like, rock-covered being on screen, you're seeing something that actually existed on set. Today we're taking you behind the scenes of the film Project Hail Mary, from the casting secrets to the production challenges you may have missed. Before we get into the hope core of this movie, make sure to like this video, subscribe to CineMagna for more Hollywood behind-the-scenes deep dive, and leave a comment below. Are you Team Ryland Grace or Team Rocky? The story of the film's creation is almost as miraculous as the plot itself. It began in early 2020, even before the book was published. Author Andy Weir sent a manuscript directly to Ryan Gosling with a humble but very specific request. He wanted Gosling to not only star as the lead, Ryland Grace, but to produce the project as well. Gosling read the entire thing in a single sitting. The timing was surreal. The manuscript arrived just as the COVID-19 pandemic was shutting down movie sets and theaters globally. Gosling noted the irony of being offered the most epic theatrical experience of his life at a time when theaters were closed. However, the story's core message, that we are capable of solving impossible problems if we don't give up, felt like exactly what the world needed. Gosling knew the project was seemingly impossible to pull off alone, so his first call was to producer Amy Pascal. Pascal, who has handled everything from Little Women to Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, saw the emotional spine of the story immediately. She viewed Ryland Grace not as a superhero or a typical astronaut, but as a completely average person who becomes capable of extraordinary sacrifice. For her, the film wasn't just about science. It was about the radical act of listening to someone else's language to save the world. To direct, they enlisted Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, a duo famous for achieving the impossible with projects like the Lego Movie. They stayed up all night reading the manuscript and were captivated by the shift midway through the story, where it transforms from a lonely disaster movie into an intimate character study between two individuals. They brought along producer Aditya Sood, who had previously ushered Weir's The Martian to the screen. Adapting the novel presented a unique internal challenge. Screenwriter Drew Goddard, who also adapted The Martian, had to figure out how to dramatize thinking. In the book, much of the story happens inside Grace's head as a monologue. For the film, Goddard and the directors decided to stage the science. Instead of simplifying the math for the audience, they leaned into the complexity, making discovery an active visual process where we watch Grace fail and test his theories in real time. Goddard even expanded the ship's operating system, Mary, to give Grace someone to argue with before meeting Rocky. Casting the human elements required a powerhouse to match Gosling's energy. They landed on Sandra Hüller for the role of Eva Stratt. Gosling had met her on the awards circuit and described working with her as a dream, noting she brought warmth to a character who is often a strong, silent type. Hüller was excited to play a character in a position of such immense global power, someone who leads with patience, courage, and heart. The supporting cast was rounded out by Ken Leung, Milana Vaintrub, Lionel Boyce, and Priya Kansara. When it came to the ship, the Hail Mary itself, production designer Charles Wood wanted to avoid the sleek minimalism often seen in space cinema. Since the ship was built by a global coalition under extreme time pressure, Wood designed it so that every capsule feels different, as if built by a different nation. He even used actual fabric and insulation as structural elements on the inner surfaces, which helped with stunt work during zero-G scenes. The sets were chameleons, engineered to rotate because gravity on the ship changes constantly. In one scene, a ladder might be on a wall. In the next, it's on the floor. The cinematography by Greig Fraser was equally intentional. Instead of the cool, distant blue tones common in sci-fi, he and the directors wanted a warmer, more humanistic palette. Much of the film was shot with a single handheld camera to keep the audience emotionally aligned with Grace's perspective. Fraser is a firm believer in in-camera lighting, so instead of green screens, the production used massive LED backgrounds to ensure the light hitting the actors was honest and real. They even built substantial physical exterior ship parts on a dark stage so Gosling could actually touch his environment. But the biggest production wizardry was Rocky. Creature effects supervisor Neil Scanlon treated Rocky not as a creature, but as the movie's second player. They explored how subtle changes in his carapace size or arm thickness shifted his personality. Most importantly, Rocky was there. Puppeteer James Ortiz provided the on-set presence and voice, allowing Gosling to have a real scene partner. Ortiz described Rocky as a mix of a miserly old man, a peppy Labrador, and a deeply anxious 14-year-old boy. This physical presence allowed for spontaneous moments that a tennis ball on a stick never could have provided. Finally, the music had to tie everything together. Composer Daniel Pemberton was given the prompt Hope Core by Christopher Miller. To make the score feel human even in the depths of space, Pemberton used voices, clapping and stomping. He even sampled the sound of his friend's squeaky water taps to create a pure, slightly unstable musical tone that became the voice of the film's beginning. By the end, this tap water sound evolves into a full orchestra and choir, mirroring Grace's own journey from isolation to connection. Now let's check out some of the cast and crew sound bites from behind the scenes of the movie.
I was given the manuscript for this by Andy Weir to both be in it and to produce, but I was given it at I mean, really, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I loved The Martian, but nothing could prepare me for this journey I was about to go on, and just how incredible this book is. And it's so fun now because this book is so beloved by so many people. They're so fiercely protective of it. I've never worked on something where I'm so confident that the story and the characters are great and that the audience is going to love it, because it's already been stress tested by the audience of book readers, and it's so beloved. So it's just really, I just knew if we could stay true to the book, that we would make a great film. My first thought was like, I needed to get a better producer than me involved, because this was sort of seemingly impossible. So I needed the best. And I knew that Amy Pascal loomed large in her legend. She'd made Little Women and Spider-Man. And if you can do that, you can do anything. So I approached her and asked her if she would produce this with me. And I was so lucky that she said yes. And then the next thought was, who can direct this? And there really was no question in my mind. It had to be Chris and Phil. They had to direct this. There was no one else for me that could do this. So I reached out to them, and they loved the book as well, and we all joined forces to start to make the impossible possible. There's so much about this book that made me want to make it into a film. It's such an epic journey. It's a journey that you only through the experience of this film. It's an experience you will never have, probably, unless with this book or with this film. I mean, the idea that you start on Earth and you go to another galaxy and you make friends with an alien and you save the world is just too fun to pass up. And on top of it, there just were so many incredible layers to it, and just really hopeful. I mean, even though it is about the sun dying, it's hopeful in the sense that it supports this idea and believes in this idea that we're capable of anything, no matter how bleak it seems, that as long as you don't give up hope, that really anything is possible and miracles are possible. Setup is that this character, Ryland Grace, wakes up in space with no memory. And he slowly regains his memories, and he realizes that the reason he's there is that the sun is dying. And then an alien shows up who's also trying to save the sun. And they form this incredible friendship as they each try to save their home worlds, just by believing that, you know, the impossible is possible. Ryland Grace is a middle school teacher who used to be in academia, but lost his career. He lost his ambition, I think, but he still believes that he's right. And he's just exceptionally smart, but still very relatable. You know, even though he's brilliant, he reacts to everything, I think, as most of us would. He's not stoic in any way. He's not your typical hero in any way. He's not, brave in any traditional sense. He doesn't have any illusions about being a hero, and he's quite fearful, and I think realistically fearful, and I think that makes him such a fun person to go on this extraordinary journey with, because he reacts to every terrifying thing with the same amount of horror that we might, but he somehow manages to not let his fear rule him, and he just keeps trying. Sandra Hüller was another person where I just couldn't imagine anyone else but her. And when we were casting the movie, it was like award season, and so I kept seeing Sandra at all of these places, and I just thought it would be a dream to work with this person. I loved her work so much, but also just, she had this, warmth to her, even though she could also play, very, the strong silent type. But there was just this warmth that was undeniable, and she was just this incredible, very special balance of both. And so, again, it was one of those things where when she agreed to do the movie, I couldn't imagine it any other way. It was such a joy to work with her. It just was like that. It was from the first scene, it was fun, and it was fun until the end. And she's the other heart of the film. The scenes with Lionel were so fun. I mean, they were too fun. It's like, that also then became the best part of the movie. And just going to Home Depot with Lionel was so fun. It was supposed to be a quick scene where we get some things and we go back to the science, and we ended up, we're bowling in the aisles, and we're stealing all the Skittles. We were at one point riding the forklift around, and the scene just took on a life of their own. And again, there's just no one else who could have played that role, and it just was such a joy to work with him. He brings so much to the film. I don't think Charlie Wood, our production designer, ever really accepted that this was just pretend. These sets were so realistic, it was a problem. They were too real. I think he was just wanted to be prepared in case at some point we said, actually, Charlie, we need to go to space for a few shots, that he would be like, yeah, I got this. You're covered. The spaces were so realistic, and the way that the sets moved was so realistic. Just the engineering of them was genius. And not like a set in the sense that like if you needed to move the camera, we needed to get wires in because I needed to float. Nothing moved. Like you had to saw the set in half and then weld it back together. It was just so incredibly realistic that it really set a bar for all of us when we got to the sets, where we thought, okay, we have to commit to this film and to our respective roles with as much creativity and as seriously as Charlie Wood committed to these locations. Drew Goddard, again, another person where it couldn't be anyone else. There's just no one else could write the screenplay. He had already written the screenplay for The Martian. He already had this relationship with Andy. Andy has such a unique voice. And he's a brilliant guy, but also like uniquely funny, just in the same way that Andy was. And just the perfect fit. So again, it's like the chemistry between the two of them, the chemistry he had with the material, with the guys, with me, his ability to adapt this odyssey and not have it feel like you were shortchanged in any way, to synthesize all these elements. Just, there's no one else that could have written the screenplay other than him. Andy's so special because he really leans into the science part of science fiction. And he's such a brilliant writer and mind, and you get to wear the brain of this brilliant person. And I swear, like, I can't prove this, but that like your neural pathways get changed, you develop new ones just through thinking through the problems that are presented to you as he would deal with them. I think it's sort of like this really like awe-inspiring, hopeful, kind of life-affirming experience that some movies can give you. And I think the film and we know that the book delivers on that. The book is so beloved by so many. The fans of the book are so focused on how we handled this material. They're very cautiously optimistic because they want it to work. But they love these characters so much that it's like a very special book in that way. A lot of people describe this as the best book they've ever read and are very emotional about the fact that it's being made into a film. So I feel a lot of responsibility to them, but I also feel really encouraged because we did stay very close to the spirit of the book and the details of the book. And having seen the film with a lot of audiences now, I just know that people will love these characters and love this once in a lifetime journey that they get to go on. The movie it's epic. So the only way to really experience the epic nature of it and the scale of it and the scope of it is on a big screen. I mean, it's about the cosmos. The beauty of it is that if you have that experience, you experience the cosmos in this probably that's as close as most of us will ever get. I just think that it's so hard to grasp our place in the universe, and it's so easy to just shut down to the idea and occasionally you get these images like the pale blue dot from Sagan, or you get images from the ISS. where you're reminded of it, but it's so easy to forget, and it's such a powerful experience. I've had the opportunity to work with astronauts who have been to space, been to the moon, and they all have these, like, when they come back, they all have these really profound experiences that they so like desperately want to share and feel so lucky to have had, but it creates a context for them that they feel is important to share and that we would all benefit from having. So I do think, and this isn't shilling for IMAX, I do think that the size of this screen and the scope in which this film operates and the cinematography of Greig Fraser and the epicness of the journey and the fact that you go to another galaxy and you see other planets and you touch the stars. It does feel, it has been for me, I think a kind of transformative experience, and I believe it will be for others who see it. The concept of a Hail Mary is, I think, you know, it's most commonly used now, I think, is a football term, which is, but it's also, I think, in any sport, it's like a Hail Mary pass. It's that pass when the clock has run out and you're at the other side of the court and you just throw the ball. It's a Hail Mary. It's the last ditch effort when everything else has failed. It's when there is no hope, but you still are not hopeless. It's that effort. It's that belief that miracles are possible. There's a special place in hell for harnesses and wire work. Nothing has ever been more different than how it looks. Like the way that it feels to be in a harness, however it looks, imagine the opposite. It's uniquely challenging and yes, feels incredibly ungraceful and labored and false. Yet, when you look at it, it seems as though it's the total opposite. Ace is not an astronaut, so he doesn't know how to behave in zero-G, and so it's all just very difficult for him, which worked for me because it was very difficult for me. So I was able to connect with him on that level. And we tried to create, at certain points, almost like we watched Chaplin's Modern Times to sort of try and create sequences that were both like a terrible dance routine that felt like balletic, but also just like complete failure after failure. That because it felt like that was a way we'd never seen zero-G as well, and would, you know, might be more realistic for someone that hadn't trained to be out there. We had some real astronauts on set, and they came during this, one of the scenes that I'm referencing where I'm just kind of going tail over tea kettle, bumping into things, like just, it was very ridiculous, but it felt like it might be truthful, and I was a little bit cautious to see what they would think of it, and they were like, it's kind of what it's like. That it's often presented in this very elegant way, but oftentimes they were saying you get so many bumps and bruises because you just forget and you're all over the place and there is no up and down, and in reality it's not like a ballet at all. This was our stunt coordinator, and just what a gem of a human being, and she just instantly becomes one of your favorite people you've ever met, and such an incredible work ethic, sense of humor, unique mind, really wanted this to feel authentic, but also like a kind of stunts and zero-G that you've never seen. So she just was relentlessly after it feeling authentic, but also feeling authentic in a way that we had never seen. And she choreographed these incredible sequences that were at times like Charlie Chaplin-esque, you know, that but on wires, and that were beautiful, and then fell apart, and then she would construct something beautiful, and then she would deconstruct it, and all the while never wanting it to just feel like, for entertainment's sake, just trying to find the realistic, truthful way for it to be entertaining. And I just found her a constant inspiration. And again, no one else could have done this film. This film would not be what it is if Eunice hadn't been our stunt coordinator. I knew there was no way that I could do it without Chris and Phil. I think they are so unique as filmmakers. It also comes from their collaboration. So this film is about collaboration. They have such a unique way of finding humor in dark and bleak places. They make things that shouldn't work, and they love things to be hard. Everything that they've done is really hard, and I knew that that they would really be excited by how difficult this was going to be. And in fact, not only were they game, but they wanted to make it more difficult. And that's exactly what it needed. Grace's first interaction with Rocky, or at least Rocky's ship, is first one of complete awe. It's so awe-inspiring, the way that the ship is realized, described in the book, but also realized in the movie, is truly like nothing you've ever seen. And he's just appropriately in awe of that. And then it occurs to him that it's an alien spaceship. And first, he's alone in space, and he's resigned himself to the fact that he's going to die alone in space. So at first, there's this burst of hope that a spaceship has arrived and he's not alone. And then he realizes that he's not alone, but whatever's in there is not human. And then, of course, you know, I'm sure every alien movie he's ever seen of like an alien coming out of your chest or wanting to live inside of you just rolls through his head, and he just becomes immediately terrified and then tries to get away from it. He is from a planet called Arid. He's a Uridian, and he's completely different from Grace in almost every way. He lives in a completely different atmosphere. He has no discernible face, although I would say eventually, after spending a lot of time with him, I could see that he had different faces. He's a rock-like spider. Not a spider, he's spider-like. He speaks in song. He doesn't see in the same way that we do. He uses echolocation. He eats in a very disturbing way. He's quite proud of, but I'm not sure why. And when he sleeps, he needs to be watched, because when they sleep, they sort of go into this suspended form of animation. It's almost like they could die and never wake up if someone doesn't watch them sleep. And he's just easy to fall in love with. Grace builds a program so that they can learn each other's language. He pieces together this laptop, tablet communication device where he records the sounds that Rocky makes. They first agree on math and measurement, and then he sort of uses that as a way to sort of find words, and then he starts clocking the words, and then eventually they develop language. Well, they're both there for the same reason, and they are both alone in space, and they both lost their crew. They're both deeply curious. And they share their cultures with each other, and they talk about their lives back home. Grace shows Rocky Earth in this simulation room that he has on the ship, and so he's able to sort of share some of play the hits of Earth and try and educate Rocky on his home, and Rocky does his best to kind of describe Arid, but you know, it's not as easy for Grace to visualize. Their friendship it's the heart of the movie. Connection can give you a reason to be brave. At first, Grace doesn't really have a reason to be brave, at least not for himself. And his connection with Rocky does that, and it just gives a kind of meaning to his existence. It's you know, becomes everything to him, and it's what they both begin to try and save. The movie is funny. The friendship between Rocky and Grace is full of humor and sort of strange banter, and this laughter is a counterbalance to how high stakes it is and how dire the circumstances are. Like The Odd Couple in a lot of ways, and it's the trying to connect, and you know, it just becomes, at a certain point, yes, he's completely alien and everything he does is different, but they start fighting and bickering and connecting in ways that I think, you know, you will relate to, as like the same way you do with your own best friend. Alone on camera for many months, and so once we got to the Rocky portion of the story, I was like very relieved to start to have company and someone to work with. His friendship with Rocky is so hard-earned, and communication is impossible, and just Rocky, in order to be in his atmosphere, has to create this device in which he can be in the space. I have to say I'm so grateful to James Ortiz, because no matter what was going wrong in that practical way, James was always there in my ear in an earwig, sort of as Rocky's voice. And when things were breaking down or not working, or I was in a harness and in a spacesuit for hours and waiting for something to be fixed or whatever it was, James and I would just talk. And so he really did become, that voice for me, like Rocky was for Grace.
The script is very intelligent, it's very adventurous, very moving. That's what I thought from the beginning, and funny. So there are a lot of ingredients that make a really good film, and because it's about a lot of things, not only about people, also about science and the earth and the universe, and what it takes to do things that you don't see coming and that you don't think you're capable of. I wanted to play Eva Stratt because I'm not so familiar with playing people in power. That was a completely new form of character for me, that there is somebody who's just doing her job in a very good way, who has the respect of everybody and who is leading the way in a lot of things, who has a lot of patience and courage and humor and heart. And I wanted to try to create this sort of energy. I thought it would be a lot of fun. And of course I wanted to play with Ryan, see her as the head of the chair of the Petrova task force, who is building the spaceship to go to Tahiti to find out why it is not infected by the astrophage. Well, the Petrova task force is a group of scientists from all over the world who gather to solve this problem of the astrophage eating the energy of the sun and to save the Earth. This is a scientist who has been dismissed by the science community, but she thinks that he is the right person for this. And Grace is played by Ryan Gosling, and it's a real joy and pleasure to just watch his process. It's really incredible to me to see him working, and he is so fast in his brain and so warm in his personality, so serious in everything that he is doing, so dedicated to the project, that it just astonishes me every day. At Chris and Phil in London, it was a long, interesting, funny conversation. And I had known their work before, and I was so happy that they asked me to be a part of it. And the work with them is, again, a real pleasure. They work without pressure of any sorts. It's very, very playful. They're very fast in inventing new. Andy Weir in London in the studio as well. It was supposed to be a quick hello, just to meet each other, and we ended up in a 1-hour conversation about life. And I'm very happy that we did that. He's an extraordinary person, I think, and an extraordinary writer, of course. He told me some things about Stratt that I wouldn't have. This film, as I said in the beginning, it combines a lot of things. It is, I think it will be very entertaining. It is very funny, very moving also, and I think you will see like pictures that you might not have seen before. It is a very human story that is told here, and I think people can, of course, through Ryan, connect very much to Ryland Grace and ask themselves the question that he is asking himself. It's a film about friendship, but also about science, about the earth and what we can do to continue living on Earth, or even to let Earth to let it exist longer. And that has, of course, to do with our lives today. In our case, it's about the sun dying, getting colder. We live in a world now where everything becomes hotter and hotter, and there are many things we can do to stop that. And we see a person who gives his life to stop that process in that story. And I think it kind of reflects on all of us.
Rocky is an alien from a faraway galaxy. He has 5 legs, no face. He communicates in echolocation. He has a genius-level intellect. He is an inventor and an engineer. But I think on the inside, he's this genetic splice of a miserly old man, a very peppy Labrador, and a deeply anxious 14-year-old boy. So the fun of Rocky is playing all of those things, which I get to do every day, which is pretty crazy. This is a film about an alien and an astronaut who become very, very close friends. And through their friendship and through their connection and their bond, they end up saving the world, which, you know, doesn't happen every day. I got word that they wanted to play this alien character, not CGI, but as a puppet. And I went, that's pretty crazy. So one thing led to another, and I had a lovely meeting with Phil and Chris, and we had a great chat about this film, and it was really, really fun. And 30 minutes later, I got a phone call that said, hey, would you like to be an alien in a movie? And I went, I'm an alien most of the time, so let's do it for other people now. But that's basically how it happened. More than half of the film, Rocky's in a scene with Ryan, and he has to have a full gamut of expression. And how do you do that on a character that doesn't have a face, has 5 legs, and is sort of the silhouette of some cryptid spider, right? And you kind of want to avoid all of that because the character on the page is this endearing friend, and we have to fall in love with him. And I think one of the things I learned on this is the fact that follow your instinct and trust and lean in, and the scene can work even better. So you end up kind of creating something that you would never have expected. And that's sort of been the theme of this whole project. It's never what you can possibly expect. And what you get is something more heartful, more emotional, more beautiful. I definitely felt some pressure playing Rocky. It doesn't take very long and sort of 4 minutes on the internet to go, oh, there's a lot of love for this character. So I didn't want to mess it up. I really wanted to honor him. You kind of need to be present and play the scene and find out what this relationship is versus doing sort of a book report of what you know the book is. I think the biggest gift of this whole project is the fact that I didn't realize how much range Rocky has on the page. You know, he is actually every instrument in the orchestra, and he has a lot of sadness and a lot of joy and a lot of anger. Most of our relationship is sort of like two brothers that are just arguing and loving each other and trying to understand each other. And it's a lovely sort of testament to the art form of puppetry that, like, we can, you know, it works and there's value in it, and you can create some really special magic on set. I think the reason my fans are going to fall in love with Rocky is the reason that I fell in love with Rocky, in that he is this completely unprotected, unadorned person. He doesn't have he doesn't have an awareness of social norms. He doesn't have an awareness of things that maybe he shouldn't say out loud. So he's just this sort of open person that just says what he's thinking, and that does create friction and also creates a lot of comic opportunities. But I think people are going to love him because he's so lovable. You know, he's this sweetie pie that's doing his best and has been through a lot. Sure, Rocky is an alien and Grace is a human, and they have different experiences, but I think what makes their relationship really interesting is the fact that they actually both have very similar traumas that they're both immediately responding to. They both have a very similar relationship to their own ability and their own skills. They're both geniuses, but they don't believe that they are. And they both have this mission to right a wrong and make something better. But I think, you know, what they really want is to just be near somebody that understands them. So again, it's this magical mixture of the soft-hearted and the big and broad and heroic, and it's really beautiful. Most of the time when he's on the Hail Mary, he's causing a great deal of havoc because he's just like a kid in a candy shop. He wants to see everything and learn everything and know what it is. So yeah, that may explain me pushing a ball around and breaking a bunch of stuff on set.
What's so great about Rocky in the book is the way he's described as a character that it looks like he's made of rocks, has no face, has 5 leg arms that he can use for various different purposes. It was a really unique design idea for an alien.
And a lot of people would change some of those things to make their lives easier, but not us. We even added things to make it harder. But we really wanted to honor what was so inspiring about the book, which is how do you create a personality without a face and with a completely different language and space clothes.
We consulted with Andy Weir, the author of the book, a lot about the physiology of how he moves, like his sort of internal steam hydraulic system that he uses to move his muscles around, to make sure that we were doing it in a way that felt accurate to what was described in the book. We went back and forth and on making a design that would work as a performable creature by a team of puppeteers, as well as something that could have enough personality and range of motion to make you fall in love with the character. And we kept saying to people, like, Pixar made you feel sorry for a lamp, and it has no face, and it only has like 5 points of articulation.
Yeah, it's just this.
You can get empathy out of physical performance, and we were able to do that with James Ortiz, the lead puppeteer, and a team of what we call the Rocketeers.
Our argument, and I think it proved to be true, is that Ryan Gosling needs a scene partner. Like, it's not fair to ask him to carry an entire movie where he's basically the only person and not have someone to act with. And so what was wonderful about what James Ortiz and his team were able to provide was not just to, like, the mechanics of having something physical for Greig Fraser to photograph, but a person and a personality with which Ryan could act.
Ryan carries this movie on his shoulders. So much of it is him or him talking to a creature. And I don't know who else could have pulled this off in the way that he did, because the part requires so much gravitas and humor, heart, and fallibility. and charisma, and he has all of that stuff, and he can make it all seem natural. He can make you believe that Rocky is real and really there. He can make you feel despair. He can make you feel hope. He can make you laugh in the most unexpected ways. He is,
and he's doing it all in one movie.
yeah.
You know, he's like an actor with so many moves, and in a film where he is in every scene, because he was in every day of a 102-day shoot, he gets the opportunity to show all of those skills in one picture.
We did a search of puppeteers and auditions and chemistry reads with Ryan because we knew whoever was going to be the lead puppeteer and voicing Rocky on set was going to have to be a scene partner. And James was Rocky. Like, he had read the book 20 times and highlighted different sections about Rocky and the way he moved and the way he thinks and what he knows and what he doesn't know. And he's blind and he sees through echolocation. So we would always keep that in mind with every improv he was thinking the way Rocky was thinking. And the magic of that spontaneity, you just can't get, doing it any other way. What's really interesting about this movie is that we don't think of it as a sci-fi movie. We think of it as a human story, a story about a relationship, about a friendship. It is emotional, it's funny, it's dramatic, it's exciting.
It's stakesy.
Yeah.
Like, literally, if he can't figure out Rocky's language, the entire earth will perish. That's what I love about it. It's like one-on-one scenes with the highest possible stakes.
And I think people come out of the movie feeling like maybe nothing is impossible. And that's what's really great about it. You don't have to have read the book. You don't have to know anything about the movie. You can be thrown into this movie, and no matter who you are, you're going to find a way to connect to it. And it's a beautiful film. It's a funny film. And it's a real experience. The VFX supervisors on this film were the legendary Paul Lambert and Meg Sarnowska. They brought a level of credibility to the film that was really important to us.
But they also brought a ton of their creative spirit into the picture. There's no way Rocky is that delightful without their encouragement. There's no way that the fishing trip sequence, which is full of like all of this incredible, colorful aurora, is that way without their big imaginations. But yeah, they were incredible partners.
So James Ortiz was Rocky, but the other half of Rocky was Arslan and the team at Frame Store that did an amazing animation work on him. And
we kept saying that Arslan is the personality to land Rocky's performance.
And we would have these meetings with him where I think Rocky would be like, look over.
Yeah.
And he just embodied
We're like, you've got the job.
the personality of Rocky so much. And he understood what we were trying to go for and make people not understand or not know which shots were made with a creature puppet and which shots were made with an animation team.
Yeah, he had the enthusiasm and the willfulness to embody Rocky's spirit.
Arslan Elver, one of the best.
Yep.
Project Hail Mary is about a man named Ryland Grace, played by Ryan Gosling, who wakes up in space with no recollection of who he is or how he got there, and slowly remembers what his mission is and meets a little special friend along the way that's going to help him save the world. Ryland Grace is a microbiologist who was kicked out of academia and starts the film teaching 7th grade science. He is thrust into this insanely crazy high-stakes situation and reacts in the way that a person who isn't a Navy SEAL might react, a real person might react, like any of us, because we're all very regular, normal people.
Yeah.
He's super smart. He's super resourceful, but he isn't maybe the best at social skills or other things. So he has to learn and grow and figure out how to become a real hero.
Correct. In the film, there is a space microbe called astrophage that are eating the sun, and in fact, diminishing the energy of every star in the entire galaxy except for one. And so, in order to keep the Earth from plunging into a new ice age, we, the human race, get together and send Ryan Gosling 11.9 light years away to study this one star and understand why it is not succumbing to this microbe. And he wakes up in a spaceship. Everyone else is dead. He realizes he's alone trying to solve this mission, and he looks out the window and he sees an alien craft is there to study the exact same problem.
Yeah, the stakes are huge in the movie, but really it's a relationship story. It's a friendship story, and that is the heart of the movie, and that's the most important thing about the film, is making you fall in love with these characters as they are learning how to work together and starting to care for each other. And that's what makes the film so emotional, and that's what makes the film so warm. A lot of films that are set in space are very antiseptic and cold and distant. This movie is warm and hopeful and optimistic, and it's full of emotion.
Charlie Wood, who's our very distinguished production designer, threw himself into research. So much of what he did was look at what different space agencies build. The cockpit that he built is full of real avionics from spacecraft and from like stealth jets and stuff like that. And so he brought a kind of a heightened realism to all that stuff.
We had two different forms of gravity when it was in centrifugal mode and when it was traveling. So we had to have the sets not only built vertically and horizontally so that the characters could experience them in those two different ways. Very complicated to take a set and turn it on its side and figure out how it would work physically. But we made it extra difficult for ourselves, but it paid off because it's really there and you can feel it.
Eva Stratt has been tasked by the entire world to organize this massive multinational project involving the space agencies of Europe, America, China, and Russia, among others, and marshal all of those forces together in some kind of organized way. So you need someone who's incredibly willful, who's endowed with outrageous amounts of power that no single person should be endowed with, and somehow to not abuse that power, or at least abuse it for the right reasons. And so we cast a wonderful actor named Sandra Hüller, who is able to wear that power casually for most of the film.
Sandra's one of the great actors of this era. She brought a lot of reality and thoughtfulness to the part and was able to make Stratt someone who was hard-edged and no nonsense, but also felt like a real person and not a caricature.
From the first meetings we had with Ryan about the screenplay, he was insistent that he wanted to be a regular person and react like a regular person would in these scenarios. He's like, if I woke up and a robot was trying to force feed me food out of a tube, I would want to fight the robot. So we created a fight with the robot. If I was asked to do a spacewalk, I would immediately say no. You would have to drag me kicking and screaming to get out into the hull of a spaceship. Absolutely not. So those intuitive reactions that he had, which I think are the kinds of reactions that a regular person has, an audience member has, I think makes his growth into the person who saves all of mankind, and oh, by the way, a whole other planet's worth of life, that makes that so much more powerful and credible.
Yeah, you can really relate to him, even though he's really smart. He's a microbiologist. Most of us aren't microbiologists, but the character is also at the same time very human and not someone who has no flaws or insecurities. He is like us, and that's why I think he's so relatable in the film.
He's such a generous collaborator because he understands that the movie and the book are not the same thing, that the movie ought to be its own thing inspired by the book. And he was very encouraging all the way through, saying, like, I want to see how you guys react to the book. I want to see the book grow as a course of the movie as opposed to being strict. The people who were the most strict were us. We're saying, like, I don't want to make it easy on myself. I don't want to take any shortcuts. I want to act like the book really happened and that we're just telling a biopic about these people.
We loved this book so much. And we had a previous relationship with Andy and Aditya Sood, who runs our company with us. He discovered and produced The Martian, so we've known Andy for a long time and have asked him weird science questions over the years. And so to be able to get to work with him so closely was really exciting.
What he does as an author is create impossible problems to solve, and then he solves them, right? And the thing that I think sets him apart is not just his focus on engineering and engineers and scientists, but really his ability to bring forth the emotionality and heart of those characters. Like, ultimately, the reason this book is a sensation is because of the relationship. It's because of how it makes you feel.
Drew has been a longtime friend of ours that we've wanted to work together for many, many years, and we've admired him as a filmmaker, as a writer, as a storyteller. And when we decided to do this movie, we knew only Drew could be the one to write it. He told the story in a way that felt sweet. The stakes were huge, but there's so much emotion in it. Like, it's such an emotional roller coaster, the movie. And
he's like he's such a clear thinker.
It's true.
You know, it's like in a thing where you're trying to distill this big book into a regular sized movie and keep all the things that make the book exciting, not pull any punches. Write these scenes that have big feelings and emotional moves in them, but where people talk like people, they don't say the subtext out loud. And so when you would work on the scenes and workshop them, you would realize the brilliance of Drew's design and structure as we rehearsed the scene.
We were so lucky to get to work with Greig Fraser as a cinematographer. He is a genius and an amazing collaborator. He was really excited to dive in and make this movie look like nothing you'd ever seen before. There have been a lot of movies that are set in space, but nothing that looks like this. We worked with Daniel Pemberton many times, the Spider-Verse films and other things, and he is a genius. And he always approaches movies the same way that we do, which is trying to do something new, trying to make something you haven't heard before or seen before. And his score is a big part of this movie and a big part of why it feels so special. He's a mad scientist. He found all these crazy instruments and things that aren't even instruments to create some of the notes of the melodies in the movie. He also used massive choirs to sing choral elements throughout the whole picture. We had a team of children stomping and clapping, bringing percussion in these very unusual ways, and then adding an orchestra on top of that, so it has this fullness and richness, and it feels like the whole world is cheering on Ryland throughout the movie, and it really takes your breath away.
I would encourage everybody to see the film in IMAX at least the first time, because it's the way we intended the audience to experience the film.
The hugeness of it, the vastness of it in IMAX is breathtaking.
The film exceeds your field of vision. So basically, like, you're following the characters on and you can't see the edge of the screen. So you feel like it's all around you. And the same with the sound. You're immersed in it in a way that you can only really experience in a theater. It's awesome. It's like literally awe-inspiring to be in the presence of that much sound and that much light.
That's why we go to the movies. We want an experience that we can't get normally. We want to feel something, and we want to see and hear something that we don't get to do every day. And this movie has that in spades. We tried to be as fully scientifically accurate as we possibly could, because that's part of the joy of reading an Andy Weir book. It's grounded realism. It's something that feels like it's real and could really happen, and it's not in some faraway universe where everybody looks like a person in a rubber suit. This is real science.
This film is really, really important to see in the theater. We are filming in an IMAX ratio, and it's very important to make sure that the audience sees this as large as they possibly can and in IMAX, because the world that takes place at the top and the bottom of frame is almost as important as what takes place left and right. In fact, it's probably as important, because it's showing sort of these confined spaces that Grace is in. So it's also helping show the scale and the grandeur and the grandness of the space that they're inhabiting. So it's very important that this film gets seen as large as possible. Our initial conversations were rather broad for the look of this film. We'd talked about the fact that this film needed to be light. This film needed to be light-hearted, but also deep and emotional. We talked about the fact that there are other space films that have been made in the past that have been extraordinarily good, so we needed to find a space and a place that this film existed. We talked about the ability to keep the character central and the characters central. We talked about the ability to make sure that the characters sort of had a really good interaction with each other and were able to kind of become incredibly intimate with each other. The challenges of shooting inside the ship were immense. Shooting in small spaces is always tricky, but then trying to do it with 35, 40 crew people all around was incredibly hard, incredibly challenging. Trying to make sure that we were able to find angles on this that showed the small spaces but didn't make the audience feel too claustrophobic was the biggest challenge. Ryan Gosling, I must say, this is my first time working with Ryan, and he is a pleasure to work with. I mean, he's incredibly funny, but he's also got incredible humanity, and his characterization of Grace is very, very warm. It's the camera really enjoys being close on Grace. That it's important that we show Grace in his space, but it's also really important the camera kind of shows him close up, because I think most of this film, a lot of this film plays in his head and his eyes, and so an actor like Ryan has incredible eyes to do close-ups on. I've known Phil and Chris for quite a few years. I've never had the chance to work with them. So when this film came up to do, I knew it was exactly the film that I wanted to do with them. I love the way they both think. They're very non-literal filmmakers, and they think very much like in the world of animation, where anything's possible, and the constraints of normal filmmaking don't necessarily apply. And so as somebody that sort of makes films for a living, like films for a living, I am very much constrained by the reality of gravity, by the reality of what's able to be recorded on film and through a lens. And they generally push me into a world where I'm able to kind of step outside that box to think quite laterally and push the boundaries of what I'm making. This is my first film having worked with puppeteers and with a puppet. Rocky is an incredibly interesting character, and Rocky doesn't have a face, Rocky doesn't have eyes, and Rocky doesn't have the general human characteristics that one would normally focus on when you're a cinematographer. So finding Rocky's humanity and his character was the biggest challenge.
The initial idea for Project Hail Mary is actually, it's like 5 or 6 unrelated ideas that I had for books that were in my kind of mental ideas file. And then over time, I kind of glued them together and sanded off the edges, and it turned into Project Hail Mary. But I originally had an idea for a story about an astronaut who wakes up on a spaceship with amnesia. I had another idea for a first contact story. Then a completely unrelated idea for a story about what if we had a mass conversion-based fuel. bit by bit, those all came together and became Project Hail Mary. My elevator pitch for Project Hail Mary would be that it's a buddy movie with world-shattering consequences. Ryland Grace is a middle school teacher. He's a very gifted scientist, but one who got kind of drummed out of his field by having unpopular opinions that turned out maybe they're true. Well, coming up with Ryland was a real challenge for me because this is the first time I wrote a book where the main character wasn't just based on me. My earlier books, the main characters are based on aspects of my own personality, but Ryland I created from whole cloth. So I'm always trying to grow as an author. And so for Ryland, I came up with his core personality is he's very conflict averse. He doesn't like being challenged too much. That's why he ultimately left academia to become a really popular middle school teacher. Well, my whole shtick is using accurate science in my stories. And the biggest challenge of that is explaining it to people who might not understand it or might not even care about it. So I put a lot of work into that. And what I do is I first off say, what is the absolute minimum amount of information I need to give the reader? I don't need to go, just because this stuff is really interesting to me doesn't mean it's interesting to the reader. So I give them the bare minimum information they need just to understand the events of the plot. Then I describe it, usually with some humor, because people will swallow any pill if it's coated in a nice sugary layer of humor. So they'll take any amount of exposition if you're making them laugh. And then the other thing is, and this is the best part, I love it when I hear this from readers, is they say, like, well, it got into sort of a scientific, explanation, and my eyes glazed over a little bit, and I just kind of skimmed until it got back to the plot. Other writers might be kind of offended at that. They're like, oh, I want you to read every word I write. But for me, that is awesome. That means the reader has so much confidence in me that they just assume I'm accurate on all of that science. That their suspension of disbelief is rock solid on that. They don't need it explained to them. They're like, yeah, sure, okay, I believe it, And so when you get to that point with a reader, you're golden. Drew's an awesome guy to work with. I didn't have that much to do with making the screenplay, so he pretty much did it on his own. I had complete confidence because I'd seen what he did with The Martian. He, once he had a rev, he sent it for notes. We all gave notes, myself included. He would call me once in a while he was working on the screenplay to ask for clarifications or on the science or on character, concepts. But for the most part, he just took care of it himself. He's very good at that. I couldn't have asked for a better portrayal of Ryland on screen than Ryan. It's amazing. He did such a fantastic job. He brought layers to the character that I didn't even put into him. My biggest challenge in writing is creating characters with depth and complexity and nuance. And I do my best, but I still have a way to go with that. Ryan took what I began with Ryland and ran with it and made Ryland a deep and complicated and really great character. So what's awesome is all the work Ryan did to make Ryland such a good character, I'm going to get credit for, even though Ryan was the one who did the work. But that's fine with me. Sandra absolutely nailed Stratt as a character, all the way down, not just to the way she acted, but the nuance and the vocal inflection that I imagined. I did have some specific ideas for how Stratt spoke, how thick her accent was, what sorts of intonations she would put on words. And I never talked to Sandra about it, but she just went straight to that. And so it was absolutely perfect as far as I'm concerned. The sets were amazing, and I saw the Hail Mary, and I thought, wow, okay. So of course, in the studio, unlike within the context of the story, it's all just one big ship. In the studio, they're broken up into, okay, here's the cockpit over here, here's the tunnel over there, there's the bedrooms over there. So it was kind of, here's the lab, and it was kind of interesting going around trying to figure out, okay, wait, how does this connect to that? So it was hard for me on the soundstage to figure out what the geometry of the whole ship was. But each individual room, I'm like, wow, this looks great. This looks fantastic. I especially love the cockpit. I'm a sucker for lots of blinking lights and gack. Phil and Chris did an incredible job. I've loved everything they've made. And wow, just watching them work on this project. They were always saying like, Jesus, this is hard. This is the hardest movie we've ever had to make. But to me, this was the only time I've ever seen them work, as on a project that I was on. And I was like, wow, it seems like they're handling it just fine. So I don't know. I imagine it was very difficult for them. It was a large and complicated shoot, but they from an external observer's perspective, they just handled everything so beautifully. Well, after they see the movie, I just hope that the audiences feel good. I never have a message. I never have a moral. I'm not trying to change anybody's belief on anything. I just want to entertain. And I admit I'm a bit of a, pie in the sky, head in the clouds optimist. I really do think humanity is a pretty cool thing. And so I'd like people to come out of there feeling like good about humanity or good about the world, maybe just a little bit. I'm so happy with the way things have turned out. Obviously, I'm really glad that people like the book so much, and I really think they're going to love the movie. I think it's going to be a big hit, and yeah, I hope it becomes kind of part of the zeitgeist for a little while, where people talk about it or have running jokes. I look forward to memes.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hope core of filmmaking, make sure to like and subscribe to CineMagna. Don't forget to leave a comment. What's your favorite behind-the-scenes fact about the making of the Hail Mary? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next mission.